I'm gonna be honest, I fell down the Jason Kelce pipeline in the exact same way most people have fell down the Jason Kelce pipeline, which is Taylor Swift and TikTok leads me to Travis Kelce. Travis Kelce leads me to New Heights. New Heights leads me to Jason and Kylie Kelce. And Jason and Kylie Kelce lead me down a rabbit hole of just being obsessed with the two of them and finding this documentary about Jason. I'm pretty sure that's how most people, and obviously not all people, Jason Kelce is one of the best centers to ever live. I have found that out recently. But up until 2 months ago, I'd never heard Jason Kelce's name. And now I'm consuming so much goddamn Jason Kelce content with New Heights, this documentary, him on Last Meals. And now I'm honestly kind of like, hey, maybe if he doesn't retire, I should watch a couple Philly games next year. You know what I mean?
So this all brings us here to today, where I announce that I am retiring.
Now, if you know who Jason Kelce is, great. You can explain who he is a lot better than I can, believe me. But for those of you that don't know who Jason Kelce is, who aren't huge into football like myself, I'm not necessarily like dumb when it comes to football. I played a little bit in high school. I watched it when I was younger. I get it. I enjoy it for the most part, but it's not something I follow. So for those of you that aren't as familiar with it as others, much like myself, let me give you just a little quick rundown on who Jason Kelce is. Jason Kelce is the center for the Philadelphia Eagles as well as their captain. He's often considered one of the best centers that has ever lived and will probably be one of the few centers that gets put into the NFL Hall of Fame. He was drafted in the 6th round in 2011 and is a Super Bowl champion. He's been in a lot of Pro Bowls and he's a 6-time All-Pro selection. He's also the brother of Travis Kelce, which, as everybody knows, is dating Taylor Swift. That's why a lot of people are here right now, let's be honest, but I stayed here because of Jason. He hosts New Heights with that brother, which is actually, even if you're not a football fan, like I said, I know enough about football to get by, but even if you're not a football fan, it's just an incredibly entertaining podcast. I highly recommend it to everybody.
Bella, right out of high school, marries a 109-year-old vampire, and then they completely... After marriage, they start having sex.
Just call me whenever you're ready.
And
I'm not doing this to myself.
They have a baby, and the baby's half vampire, half human.
And he also has this little-known documentary on Amazon Prime, which I found out about, turned it on, and was just blown away by how good it was. I was just like, oh, cool, one more Jason Kelce thing to watch to fuel my strange obsession, let's be honest. And it just blew me out of the water. Weirdly, almost moved me to tears a couple times. I laughed my ass off, and it's just so good. But what is the Kelce documentary? Originally, it started out as Jason wanted to document what he thought was going to be his last season in the NFL. An emotional time for him because football has been all he's known for the vast majority of his life. But what started as a documentary that was purely supposed to be to record this final season became so much more because in that year, he went to the Super Bowl to play his brother Travis Kelce in the Chiefs versus the Eagles. Also in that year, his wife was pregnant and gave birth to his 3rd daughter. And also in that year, he started the New Heights podcast, one of the biggest podcasts that we have on any platform now. What this documentary gave us more, though, is an inside look at Jason Kelce's life and an inside look at one of the biggest stars in the NFL that you don't often get. And what honestly surprised me and was really heartwarming was the humbleness of Jason Kelce's life. Like, I'm going to run you through a few moments of this documentary that were just phenomenal, that either blew me away or warmed my heart or were really surprising, because getting to see this all-pro Hall of Famer just have this humble lifestyle and be an amazing father and have everyday worries is just really nice. And just kind of drives home why everybody... And I mean everybody that watches TikTok, because I'm reading the comments, watch the New Heights stuff and was like, came for Travis, stayed for Jason. And I'm right there with him. So one of the first things that just kind of stands out in my head is the moment where Jason is looking around for his Super Bowl ring because he wants to compare Super Bowl rings on the podcast with his brother. And he's just kind of walking around in his office. And one thing that my wife pointed out was like, hey, their house is kind of messy. They got baby gates around. They got boxes laying places just like we do. You know, we got kids running around and we don't want them getting into shit that they're not supposed to. And their house, which is, I will be honest, nicer than my house, but not by like the widest margin. They could have a fucking mansion if they wanted to. This guy has a patio that's not so different from mine. But he's walking around and he's like, where would a Super Bowl ring be if I was a Super Bowl ring?
This is how I look. I just kind of like start moving stuff, and then usually something will just like remind me, oh, okay. That didn't work right there, but usually that's how it works.
It's probably, and I haven't looked this up, hundreds of thousands of dollars, or at least like not far from $100,000 ring. And he's just like, it's supposed to be in this box. It's probably in a pocket somewhere, if I'm being honest. And speaking of Kylie, pretty much anything involving Kylie is wonderful. She is just amazing. And the story of how they got together on Tinder and how she thought it was either catfish or actually Jason Kelce, and either way, it would be an amazing story. And how Kylie says they met on Tinder because she's like, Jason won't let me lie about this. And their marriage is just like the cutest thing ever. The Kylie Kelce episode is one of my all-time favorite episodes. She's just a blast.
He is the sex symbol for the NFL.
I am almost 6 feet tall, and I'm not thin. And I will hold my ground. That's mine.
Seeing her in this, before I really started consuming like a lot of New Heights, this is my first introduction to like Jason and Travis and Kylie and all of these people, Mama Kelce, their father. This was kind of my first big introduction to them. And a big criticism that this documentary gets, probably like the only criticism, is that there's nothing in this that nobody doesn't already know if they're fans of this family and of Jason in particular. But the thing is, if you go into this not being a huge football fan, not being a major Swiftie that has learned everything about everybody that's just in the orbit of Taylor Swift, or if you haven't been listening to New Heights for, the past year or so that it's been out, this gives you a great rundown of who these people are. And this is just a wonderful family from Mama Kelce all the way down to the kids. They're just spectacular. And speaking of kids, another one of my favorite moments in this documentary, and this is skipping all the way to the end from the very beginning. Like I said, in the end of the documentary, Kansas City Chiefs play the Philadelphia Eagles in the Super Bowl. So it's often considered the Kelce Bowl. That's what it was kind of marketed as. Mama Kelce had this cool jacket. I loved it. She was a bigger star than they were for a time. I'm not a huge football fan, but I sat down and watched that Super Bowl. I was aware of what was going on before I even really knew who the Kelce brothers were. But in the end, as we all know, the Birds lost, It was very sad. I was rooting for the Eagles. I love an underdog story. The Eagles are the biggest underdogs in football, except for the Lions. Go Lions, Michigan boy represent. But he had one of the saddest moments of his entire life. He's not sure if he's going to retire from football, and this is the last game he will ever play professionally. And it's just devastating. But then it cuts to him sitting in his hotel room after the Super Bowl playing with his kids. Because at the end of the day, when the game's over, he's still a dad. And it's devastating, but it's just heartwarming at the same time.
Daddy. Why? What?
You're okay.
I'm okay.
You're okay. Mm-hmm. Dad, I made this especially.
Oh my goodness, that is so beautiful.
And he's telling his kids, no, be happy for Uncle Trav. It's a great thing. And Kylie's like clearly devastated. It's such a touching moment, and one of those things that brings you down to earth. And like, yeah, parasocial relationships, big superstars on a pedestal, yada yada. It can't really be helped in modern day society with these like hugely famous celebrities and football stars. Sometimes you forget they're just people too, and it's moments like this that are really like, oh yeah, he's a dad doing his job. That he finished his job. It was a bad day at work, This isn't like a deep dive into this documentary. It's just something I watched and I thought was so much better than I had predicted it would be. I like documentaries. I like sports documentaries. There's just something so inspiring about them. They get you amped up. Like, and Jason's good at getting people amped up. He's the captain of the team, and before the big game, he's standing on the stage and he's pacing around trying not to cry, amping his team up. And it's moments like that that are just so inspiring in every single sports doc, and it's what I went into this expecting to have. And there's parts of it that I did have like that. But then there's other parts of it where he's talking about how his body is failing him. And he thinks he should retire because he wants to be able to play with his kids. And he's worried about concussions and brain damage. And he's worried about being able to get up off the ground. but he does it anyway. There's moments where he's playing with his kids in his yard, or he's gardening with his brother Travis, or he's hanging out with his mom, or just having a date with his wife, or a poker game with his friends. That is a truly heartwarming experience. And it's crazy how well this documentary goes back and forth, and you're never quite sure at the end if you want him to retire and be with his family, or if you want to see him go on and win another Super Bowl. And eventually, yes, he didn't retire, and the Eagles were out of the playoffs. We know the story again. The Chiefs are now 2 years in a row won, but that's not what I'm talking about. I hope he retires this time, but it's amazing that watching this documentary, knowing what happened, I was still in my chest, just like, I don't know what I want him to do. It's wonderful. It took this real life kind of basic story and pulled at your heartstrings and inspired you. And at the end of it, I was like, hey, maybe I'm a football fan now. I looked over at my wife and was like, hey, I'm going to watch football next year. And she was like, okay, whatever, it's fine. Honestly, I think that anybody can enjoy this. I don't think just fans of documentaries. I don't think just Philly fans. I don't even think just football fans would like this. I think anybody can jump into this and just have a whirlwind of emotions and come out of this having an awesome time. Thank you for watching. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe. Check out my other videos.